Hello, everyone. Welcome along to another in Cumulus's virtual CRM Summit sessions. I'm David Beard. I'm joined today by Danny Lewis. Hi, Danny.
Hello, David.
And this session is one we've called Growing CRM Footprints. And we did this because we thought we'd like to have a chat between the two of us around this idea about how to approach deployment for your business. Some people like to go big bang, do everything for everybody in one go. And other people would like to try, etc., before they move too far or too fast. And so we're going to talk about that and talk about some of the reasons and some of the ways you might approach it. And Danny also would like to sort of offer his thinking about the way they help customers manage through implementations. So let me start this by giving you some sort of scene setting based on some analyst work that I've read and have used a lot before. Because I want you by the end of the session to walk away with ideas about, oh, I could consider CRM there, and maybe this is how I should approach it. Sage CRM has a tremendous opportunity for our customers around the world, many of you who are Sage Accounting customers, but maybe don't have CRM. And we hope by the end of this that you will take away some ideas for what you might do. So particularly in the last year, unsurprisingly, being more organized, more efficient has become a big deal, right? Particularly with the remote workforce. And yet Software Advice, this analyst firm that I've used before, have talked to people about CRM, and they're people in businesses like you, your size, your industries, those things, and have often heard back that CRM software can be hard to use or clunky or awkward. And that isn't a great story. And so I think that's why thinking about how you want to use it and how to deploy it is important. We don't want you to have software that is bloated with unnecessary features or maybe not using the right thing for the right time. And I know, Danny, you've found, haven't you, in some of your expertise, some of your delivery engagements, that starting small often does make sense?
Absolutely, yeah. We found that's predominantly with the majority of customers the best way of doing it. There's always some partners that, well, some customers that have a need to do a full scoped project implementation, but for the majority, it lowers the actual upfront costs, it lowers the deployment time, and means that they get the maximum amount of value from their investment in the quickest possible time.
Right, right. And I think what's been interesting for me and looking at this analyst reports material for the last year or so, increasingly buyers have a much better understanding of what CRM can offer, how it could help them in marketing activities or sales or selling. And so there are more informed buyers, which is great. That's what we like. And they're realizing that in a remote workforce, particularly, that manual methods really are very difficult and lead to a lot of errors and things like that. Now, some people have evolved to using spreadsheets, and that's fine. And there is some element of CRM that is available or workable in a spreadsheet, but it's not perfect, and it doesn't give you all the extra tools, workflow automation, those sorts of things that Sage CRM would give you. And so it's interesting to talk and focus our conversation today about people that are looking for something, know what they need, realize that CRM doesn't really stretch, and also making sure they don't buy things they don't need, because buyers are discerning more than ever. You don't want to pay for things, as I said, you don't use. And so understanding where you're starting from is a good place to begin. Now, this Software Advice analyst firm, as I spoke about earlier, has these generic guidance points about sort of starting small and moving up, similar in some ways to what Danny does with his 357, which I know he'll speak about shortly. What their position has been is to start with something they call sales automation, which makes sense, right? And a large majority of our sites, as we look at the analysis of our licenses around the world, do that. They start with sales automation. Now, automation sounds big and maybe a bit scary, and it doesn't have to be. It simply means basic contact management with some overlay around making sure that things like sales leads are followed up, that the marketing automation goes, the marketing goes out the door when it should do. People know they have to ring a customer back at a certain time, those sorts of things. And that's, for many people, is enough automation. And the reason for that, right, Danny, is that even every business, no matter how simple they think they are, they need to lead on the front foot with sales, don't they, to make sure they do get the money in the door.
Absolutely, and it's good to with the way of implementing that kind of thing. It's always useful to consider the basic steps that you're looking at trying to implement, not trying to go too complicated, but looking at certain things that can be done automatically, and certain things that also could be prompted automatically, because you don't necessarily want your people to be sat in the CRM application the whole time. You might want automated emails, or maybe for something to progress because of a time change or a bit of data change from someone else.
Yeah.
So rather than just thinking sort of very basic, there's always some simple Salesforce automation type functionality that you
Yeah.
can actually implement even on a basic system.
Yeah, and I think that's important because also there's this concept I talk about a lot of you don't know what you don't know. And actually, even though you might be aware of what CRM systems can do, with a specific system like Sage CRM or anything else, there are certain elements of it that you don't know what you might use them for until you start using them.
Absolutely. Yeah, and
Quite
that
early
comes quite a
surprise.
lot from people that come or don't have an existing CRM application as well.
Yeah.
So quite a lot of the time when people come onto a product like Sage CRM, they're either running spreadsheets or they haven't had something in the past,
Mm.
and they have an idea of kind of what they want a system to do. But actually, in the real world, when it comes to implementing that and using that, they can overthink it sometimes and actually try and put too much emphasis on making it do lots of things, and the keep it simple kind of process fits very well to make sure that they're investing specifically in what they're aiming to do, and thinking about the output of the system as well. So just keeping it simple around what do we actually want? Is it a set of reports around a certain thing? Is it for some kind of automation? And just delivering that in the first phase, and not trying to complicate it with a massive process. And that's
Yeah.
when you're looking at people that are using spreadsheets or notepads, etc., to track that. People can get very excited and start to create lots of ideas of complicated processes and workflows, and invariably they're not quite right, and they have to be sort of redone again at a later time. And
Yeah. So I think
therefore,
to that point, starting there, starting in that team where people need to be a bit more organized, perhaps try and get some ragtag groups of people together to organize their data and processes in short, sharp, productive ways or
yeah,
efficient ways is a great place to start. And I think that's why software advice make that point as well. So that's how you would embed or start a footprint. And then the next step, again, referring to the software advice survey, suggests this idea of moving into customer service. Now, customer service and support inside Sage CRM, we call it cases, but you can call it whatever you like. It's all about helping customer service people to document cases, route them through, track them, resolve them, and report, as Danny was alluding to earlier. Now, whether you're a break fix type company or whether customer service to you is just following up on something, were you happy? Did you get the delivery? Whatever it's called, I think every element of pretty much any business should be involving and should have some system, Danny, of tracking service, right?
absolutely. It's normally something that gets implemented once you've got your core system put in. But the every customer has people that phone up, ask questions, and have particular issues,
Yeah.
and customer service. People look at it as and sort of cases and ticketing functionality as resolving problems.
Yeah.
But actually, the customer service side is maybe just about providing information, or helping and assisting someone in a particular part of their buying process, etc. It's not necessarily related around just fixing problems for customers as well.
Yeah.
So even just having a simple process when a customer or when a prospect asks you for a piece of documentation, maybe it's a brochure or something, and you want to track that, whose job is it to do it, how are you going to follow up on that particular inquiry, that can all be built into the customer service side as well, not as I say, not specifically just around solving problems that customers have.
Yeah, that's good. That's a good way of describing it. And there's an accountability overlay as well. So everyone knows what's to be done and how they're measured potentially as well. And so adapting processes not only to do it well, as you've described, but keep a track of the internal accountability, sometimes an important driver for people in terms of managing the business. And then when you start pairing that with sales features, for example, then you've got this whole connected story that says we've sold something or we've resold something, and now we're going to make sure we look after that customer on the journey as well. And that helps the sales teams, I think, the service teams, be a little more coherent in the way they talk to each other rather than a lot of finger pointing. You said, you didn't, this sort of thing.
Absolutely. It gives you that 360-degree view that everyone's talking about, the utopia of a CRM system.
There's a final piece on the software advice, and this is before I hand over to you to talk about your own implementation approach, which they call knowledge management, which is this idea of formalizing the management of the use of businesses' own knowledge. We have an area in the product called solutions, which sort of does that, but it's related to cases. I think there's a larger and stronger point here, though, and this is an interesting way of growing the footprint, of bringing together all departments in the business, making sure the data is the center of the universe, the 360-degree view, and the processes all join up so that you've got the business's value, its intellectual property, and arguably its valued property, encased, captured, managed, looked after inside a piece of software, Danny.
Absolutely. It's one of the parts that is probably least used in any CRM application, actually. But it's a really integral part to both understanding, as you say, your sort of IP and how you resolve issues. It might be that there's particular scripts, if you're a software development company, or particular answers to problems that you can keep reusing. And it's a lot of the time how you fix a problem and the process you go through in fixing that problem is as valuable as the actual items or physical things that you do to fix it. So being able to keep track of how each problem is solved, and also to identify particular issues. We've had a customer in the past that had an issue with a particular product, and when they kept selling it, it kept coming back, and they were unsure why, because it seemed that it was very, very random when they first looked at it, and they started to track these issues and eventually tracked it actually down to a particular warehouse that they were shipping from, where the storage in that warehouse had an issue that meant that product was being damaged in storage. So whilst it looked like it was a generic problem, when they started tracking that problem and the answer to that problem and linking that back through to the customer, they could start to analyze it in further details to see where that particular problem might have originated from. And in their instance, it was a warehouse storage issue that was damaging the product.
That's really interesting. So that is harnessing the knowledge that was in the business, but unless it was brought together and looked at in the round, you couldn't really do a root cause analysis. Good story.
Exactly. Okay. It was the logging of the issue against a customer.
Yeah.
And then the issue against the exact product that was shipped out of their account system that was again brought in via integration into the CRM system that then tied all of those bits of information that they had the whole time. They had all that information available, just not linked together into a single solution. And it was through the cases and the knowledge base or the solutions part of CRM that they could actually identify that issue and resolve it.
So the more joined up, that's a nice way to sort of segue or close this section of this presentation off. The more joined up things are, the easier it is to understand what's going on right across the business and to identify gaps in processes and in places to improve or to maybe take advantage of, right? So let me hand back to you, because I know you want to talk about specifics of your 357 process and how that matters and why you think it adds value to a customer.
Yeah, thanks, David. So as we've discussed before, when implementing a CRM solution with prospects and customers, we always sort of, as a business, explain to them there are two main options when approaching that implementation. We either do it as like a traditional fully scoped project where we document the full requirements down to all the field levels and discuss all of that and document it before we perform the action, or we do a land and expand approach where we do the minimum amount of configuration and then expand that as the customer's needs and understanding of their own processes and own requirements grow. We find that for the majority of customers, the simple approach actually works best. It means that we can keep the cost of solutions down to a minimum whilst keeping them focused on the core functionality they initially bought the software for. And they tend to be able to see the main return on investment in the shortest amount of time by keeping the system simple for users and making sure that those users have functionality that is required by them and not putting too much into the project that allows the system to run away with lots of fields and functionality that the users don't actually see and don't actually use and put data into. And so to support this approach and to make it easier for customers to understand, we developed what we call the 357 plan. And at the core of that plan really is a simplification of the implementation by splitting the feature set of Sage CRM into three core areas: the sales, the marketing, and support that we've just discussed. Each area is then given a specific amount of time to implement, either 3 days or 2 days. And the aim of this is to deliver a quick and simple solution to the customer with the minimal amount of customization and functionality that gives them just enough to get started on their CRM journey. We find that for this, a typical process, sales process implementation should be at the core of CRM. And this is generally, we would, as part of this, deliver the core entities such as leads, companies, opportunities, and then things around quotes and ordering if they require that. We'd like to see that forms the first 3 days of the 357 plan.
Gotcha.
Following on from this, sometimes customers want to use the CRM system for marketing or for support and customer services we've discussed. And within marketing, that's generally delivered via groups, campaigns, MailChimp functionality, etc. And that allows customers to be able to segment data, target contacts, and record information such as phone calls or email, click-through email-based marketing. And then for the third area, it's the support side or the customer service side. And this is done via the cases entity within inside CRM. And we tend to find that both of those sections, for a simple implementation, a couple of fields, and maybe a basic workflow, take around 2 days each. And that forms the 3, 5, 7-day plan, depending on what people are taking on board. And when we discuss it with customers, we explain that we've seen many customers in the past spend a lot of time and therefore cost designing a solution without really understanding the needs of their business and what their expected output of the system should be. Customers really should focus on what they're doing with the information staff are entering, whether it's for reporting, for automation, or general processing, and then deliver that within the first phase. If you're not doing anything with the data being entered, it's a waste of time for users, I feel, and complicates the CRM interface. And we've also had times where we've seen customer systems with fields on the screen that have never been used, or users have asked us what specific fields should be used for. And if it's not obvious to them as users, then really it shouldn't be in the system. And we find that we always advise customers, as I said before, that we should keep it simple, review the existing fields, see if there's any of those existing fields that could be reused, and generally just add a few fields, change captions and drop downs to make it suit that first phase requirement. But on topic of the growing of the footprint, we tend to find at that point that customers, when they've used it for a while, start to want more out of it. They start to see the benefits that they can get. And it's quite common to see what were 5 user systems over 5 days turn into 20 to 30 user systems with 20 to 30 days worth of consultancy, and really growing how that system fits within the business that they're deploying. And we become trusted advisors in helping them utilize their investment to grow their business.
That's a nice way of summarizing, and I think the 357 approach, as you describe it there, sounds sensible, sounds like a journey people could engage with. Okay, well, we've reached the end of this session. Thanks, Danny, for taking the time to explain that. I think there's some useful thoughts I hope people can take back into their business. But from us, it's goodbye for now.